Hi, my name is Mike Seiler and I'm a Budapest breeder in the United States. And I recently made a YouTube video for hand feeding using grain. But all of the requests that I get are on hand feeding a gruel or a soft mixture so that you can save the baby pigeons from day one and bring them all the way up independent of their parents if they have to. Or if you want to just supplement what the parents are doing, already. So what you need to do is you need to get either some chicken pellets or some pigeon pellets that you normally can get in any feed store, and take this and grind it into something that is a simple flour. Now you can purchase some of these products. KT makes it in the United States, or you can grind it up yourself. And there's another one called Rowdy Bush that you can buy, but that one has to be cooked. I don't like to cook my formulas because there's probiotics in these pellets, and I wouldn't want to kill the bacteria and yeast in doing that. Now what I'm going to show you is not something that was magically discovered and applied recently. An old man named Mike Kopiec from Poland, who was a Holocaust survivor, met me in the United States more than 40 years ago. And when we were at one of the shows, he appreciated the birds that I had, and he had a son who was a doctor. And what he did was he called me on the side and he showed me something that I never saw before at that period of time. And it was a cannula. This is used for antibiotic injection in intravenous puncture. And you can use a larger one if you wanted to irrigate the urinary tract or something like that. So what Mike did is, and this is the one he gave me 40 years ago, you just take it and you attach it to a syringe, a lure lock syringe. And what it does is it makes an extension of the syringe for you so that you can insert this soft tube into very, very small babies and save them from day one if you needed to. If you want to use a larger baby to feed, just put a larger cannula on there and the lure lock syringe works well. I don't use this today anymore because they clog on me. What I like to use are just simple syringes, and then I make attachments to them. So your best bet is to have a syringe that is completely clear of any kind of rubber gasket, because these can be used over and over again because they're not used for medicinal purposes, and you can sterilize them. The syringes that have a rubber gasket in it wear out, and someday you're going to go and try and feed a baby and the little gas is going to break off on you and it's going to become useless. This is good for 1 or 2 time use. This is good for many, many uses over and over and over again, and they come in all different sizes. This one's 10 cc's, this one's 35 cc's, this one is 50 cc's, and it has an attachment site so that you can make your extension even larger than this for, getting it down deep into the throat. And then you have them even larger than that, depending upon what kind of bird you want to feed. So what you can do is several things. I like to be able to see through the tubes. In the United States, they made this particular device which fits on the syringe as a lure lock, and it's excellent because it's rounded at the end and it can't hurt the babies. But you can't see through it, and if it clogs, it's difficult to unclog, and also you have to sterilize it by boiling it, and you need a lot of time to do something like that. So what I rather do is I take the syringes and I add a tip to them. And these are called lure slip, and it has a projection out sticking out of it already. So what I do is I simply take a pipette, commonly called an eyedropper, and you can get this from a science teacher, you can get it from a nurse, a doctor, anywhere you can get it from a veterinarian. And what I do is I cut them to the size that I need. Now this is a micro pipette, so I snip it off like this to fit on the syringe. And then I take this tip that I don't need, which is so very small for solution delivery, and I cut it off to the size that I know is going to fit inside of a baby bird. And what I do before I do anything else is I take the syringe itself, and at the tip of the syringe I drill it out with a 1/8 inch drill bit so that when the grain swells up, that something like corn can't get stuck in here. And what I do is I just take this and then I slip it on the end of the syringe, just like that, and now you have the ability to insert this into the baby's throat so that you get it past the windpipe and he won't drown, and you can deliver the feed. And it has measurements on the side which you can use, but you're better off doing it by eye. On newly hatched babies, you can never go more than a half a cc. A large breed like Scandaroons or maybe an African owl, you might be able to use 1 cc, but you're better off doing many feedings than drowning the youngster, because with the grain, you're not going to drown the youngster, but with the gruel, you have a very good chance of drowning the baby if you don't know what you're doing. So what I do is I add these to the smaller ones like this to feed the newborns. If the baby is older, what I do is I take tubing, surgical tubing, latex tubing, and I just attach it like this to the end of the syringe. And if it's a larger one, it's the same thing. You can take a syringe like this, which has a projection already, and just slip on the tubing so you can insert it down into the crop, and this way you can feed any size baby. You can go from day 1, if you need to, with the syringe, or you can use, intermediate feedings, helping the parents to raise the babies, and if they're totally abandoned or they won't eat, you can go to the larger one. So what I did is like a chef would do on TV. I have a solution already made, and the important thing to remember about this gruel is that it can't be too hot, because you'll scald the bird when you put it in the crop. The other thing is you don't want it too loose, so in order to make you understand what the consistency must be, it has to be something like a thick ketchup. It has to be something like a very thick pea soup. It has to be able to fit through the syringe, and it has to be able to come off the spoon. If it won't come off the spoon, you're not going to be able to draw it up into the syringe. There's 2 ways to do this. One is to, draw the material up into the syringe itself so you can distribute it into the youngster immediately. Or what you can do is take a larger syringe and fill up a smaller syringe and push it through. And I'll try and show you how to do it both ways. I use a whisk to keep it stirred because it doesn't really suspend, and by keeping it mixture, you can do anything you want with it at any time. You can take the very liquidy portion from the top for some birds, and you can take the heavier portion for the bottom. Now, rule of thumb is on newborn babies, you're not going to go more than 20% of the powder to 80% water. You do that by weight, so it's going to be 20 grams and 80 grams approximately if you want to do that. You really don't have to do all that measuring, you just have to do it by eye and make sure that it's like a thick pea soup and that it can pass through the syringe. So what I'm going to do is take the syringe and just fill it up without the tip on it so you can see it entering. And you just draw it back on the syringe and you bring the material up into the syringe and take any air out. And as you can see, you can distribute whatever you need to be distributed, but now you're better off using the tubing because that way you're not going to get any splashing and you can deliver the food into the youngster very easily. So if I take one with the tube, just insert it in here, draw it up as much as you need. If you're inexperienced, don't put a lot inside the syringe. And what you're going to do then, of course, is insert that tube into the baby, and then you're going to deliver the gruel right into the crop. And don't watch the syringe, watch the expansion of the crop, because the expansion of the crop will tell you how much you can put in here. This is not like grain feeding. If you put in too much, you definitely will drown the baby. So it's happened to me also, not because I didn't know what I was doing, but if you have a difficult youngster, they'll jump around, they'll jump off, they'll hit their crop, they'll push the food up and they'll aspirate it. But that's usually unusual. Once you know how to handle them, you're not going to have trouble. So this is an intermediary sized syringe. And then of course this is a very large syringe, and a very large baby, just before it fledges, you'll be able to give as much as 60 cc's to the baby, so at one feeding. And I generally don't feed during the day. What I do is I feed late at night, because this way, if the baby was able to do some eating on his own, you're better off, because you don't want to be hand feeding all the time if you don't have to. Also, the parents would have maybe fed them a little bit, and they have some water and some grain in them. Once they get grain into them, I would stop and just make sure they find the water, because if they get dependent on you, it's harder to break them from something like this. This is really done as an emergency or as a supplement. Now you can also use this technique for antibiotic delivery. You can use it for worming preparations if it's necessary. You can do it for one bird or for many, many birds. There's a lot of uses to this. But see how simple this is? Now that I have this syringe lubricated and the mixture is just right, you can see how it's coming out of there just like a stream, and you can simply fill up the youngsters. Now, I'm going to leave you a minute. I'm going to go and bring two very small Budapest babies up that are a day old to show you how to feed the day old. And then I'm going to break again and bring some larger babies so I can show you how to fill them up as well. I'm working alone, so I'm going to have a couple breaks in the film. So I will resume in a second with babies and again with larger babies. And I'll try to zoom in so that you can actually see the crop filling up, or I'll hold them up and I'll show you how to do it. As long as you don't press against the crop, you won't have any problems in raising the birds. Just make sure you place them down. If they're very wild and they're excited, it's okay. Let them flap their wings around. Let them move around before you put them back in the nest or in back of the box, depending upon where you have them. Now, if you want to keep them in a brooder, you can keep them in a brooder, or you can keep them in an incubator that's set at lower temperature, you know, raise them up. Sometimes they're abandoned, sometimes they hatch and no one is able to feed them because the beaks are so short. This doesn't have to be done with regular pigeons. This has to be done with your short face varieties. Although you could save a larger baby at any time, or you can hand feed something like Scandaroons that have curved beaks, and it's very, very hard to hand feed with grain. The tubing makes it very, very nice. So I'm going to break, and I'm going to get two small Budapest babies that are just newly hatched, and I'll show you how to fill them up, and then I'll break again and I'll resume showing you with larger babies. Okay, I'm back here with two newly hatched Budapest babies, which you can see are very, very tiny, and they have very, very tiny faces. They're blind and they're helpless. Sometimes the parents feed them immediately and sometimes they don't. So what I'll do is I'll use the smallest syringe for that and draw up whatever I could get into the syringe, but take out everything except about a half a cc, because their crop is so small they can't take more than a half a cc, and you're going to have to feed them about 4 times a day. So just open up the beak like this, and it's not a problem holding them up like this. And make sure that you're past the windpipe, and just drop the fluid into the crop. Make sure you're not holding him by the crop, and he's filled, and now you only have to do this 4 times a day until the parents pick them up. Once the parents pick them up, then you don't have to worry. If the parents don't pick them up, then you have to keep them warm, and you're going to have to keep doing this. But the whole trick to this is the design of this tubing, because this goes past the windpipe and you'll never drown them. So I take them like this, I hold the head up, I take my fingernail and I drop the bottom bill down, and it's hard to see on the video, I'm sure, because he's so tiny. But I'm going to take this and open his beak, go past the tongue on the top, and you leave the syringe in just like this, and make sure that the throat is straight so that when you insert this, he's filled up. And now he's completely filled here, and you have nothing to worry about. Put him back under the parents. Sometimes the parents will pick them up, and sometimes they won't. But here's 2 newly hatched babies that probably would not have survived unless I did this to help them on the first day. Now I have 260 of these banded this year, which is very unusual. It's more than everybody in the whole club can raise at one time. So the reason I'm able to save so many is because I'm home in the summertime when it's warm and you're breeding, but I also go the extra mile, and when I know they're going to hatch, I make sure that they're fed, and if they're not fed, I'll switch them. If they're not fed again, then I'll take it and I'll resort to the hand feeding formula that I have. And then I can still switch them for up to a week sometimes the babies are so very small that they don't have the strength to draw the milk in, even though the parents are trying to feed them. These two are very, very healthy, and they're on the larger side. I can look at the baby Budapest when they come out of the eggs, and I can tell if they're going to make it or not from day one just by looking at them. There's a human scale that they do the same thing with human babies, although I don't remember the name of the scale. But the nurses and the doctor can look at the baby and determine on the spot the survival rate for that child. And the same thing with the young Budapest. These two will make it, and you can see that they're very, very comfortable in my hand, you know, because they're filled now. And also, when you're feeding them the first time, what it does is it lets the head stay up on its neck on top of the crop. Sometimes the baby is so weak when they hatch that the head is laying down in the nest, and because it's laying down in the nest, the parents can put their foot on it and it'll never come up. And the longer the baby goes without food, the weaker it gets, of course, because the yolk is being absorbed or is fully absorbed already. So by giving them the formula the first time, sometimes that's the only time you have to do it, because the parents are then able to grab the little beak. The beak is only 1/4 of an inch long. It's very, very tiny, so it's hard for the foster parents to milk them for the first day. If they are accomplished foster parents, it's much, much easier for them to do that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to break again. I'm going to get some larger youngsters that I've been hand feeding for quite a while, and I'll show you how to continue them up to the point where, you know, they're ready to be on their own and then eat grain. So I'm going to break again, bring some bigger babies back, and complete this video for you. Okay, I'm back with some babies, and I focused the camera on the table so you can see me feeding the babies. You don't have to be looking at me. You need to be watching what I'm doing with my hands, and I'll show you by letting them sit on the table here how to fill the crop up and to know that it's full without watching the syringe. Now this is a young yellow, and he doesn't usually give me a hard time, so I hold him on the table like this. And I'll open the beak, and I'll insert the tube down into the crop, and then I'll slowly fill him up, and I'll watch the crop. Now that he's completely filled like that, give him a second to rest, to understand what's going on, and then you can take him and you can put him back, and then you can do all the other youngsters that you have. Some of them give you a hard time, and some of them cooperate very much. Here's another youngster this one's completely empty. I recommend never feeding a baby bird unless the crop is totally empty, because if you keep filling it and you don't let the crop empty, they'll probably get a fungus infection in the crop, and then you'll end up losing them. See, now he took the syringe okay the first time, and then he wants to give you a hard time the second time around. So give him a chance to rest so he knows what's going on, and then you can fill him up. And notice that the crop is completely filled. I'm not holding him from the crop, because this way he won't drown. And take him and then hold him like this and just put him back. This youngster is a little bit more difficult to feed because he has a crop that doesn't really hold as much as it needs to. Sometimes I feed him with grain, and sometimes I feed him with the solution. He happens to be a very good one, that's why. So I'm only going to give him half the amount that I usually give him, and I test it first, and I look at it, and he can take more, so I'll fill him up, but I'll give him a chance to stand up on the table. He likes to stand. So once he's standing like that, you have to be careful, because if they fell off, you know, the counter or something, and they land on the crop, what happens is they'll aspirate and they'll die on you. So this method of hand feeding is very, very good if you know what you're doing, but you also run the risk of drowning them. Here's another very small white one. He has a couple grains in him, but the parents are not really able to feed him really well, so I'll feed him. A baby this size takes about 30 cc's, which is the same as an ounce. You can watch the syringe if you want to, or you watch the crop. I like to watch the crop and I keep it out of the neck, because this way there's no chance of them choking. And it's really instantaneous. Of course, you know, it's messy because it is a gruel. They spit it out sometimes, or you overshoot it, or you just get a mishap with the syringe itself. So he's completely filled, and you can see that. And then I can put him away back in the nest. Sometimes when they go on the floor in the loft, you're better off leaving them on the floor, because when they keep jumping out, sometimes they watch the other baby pigeons, and when they watch the other baby pigeons eating, then you end up not having to do this all the time. This guy here, he would take about 45 cc's of the mixture, and he knows I feed him because he wants me to feed him. You can see they start to realize that you're the surrogate instead of his own parents, and of course I'm doing a better job than his parents are, so of course he's going to come to me. So here he is, completely filled. He's happy, and he's actually good until tomorrow. Now, if you take a baby pigeon and you have the occasion to see that he's not completely digested his food, just add plain water until the crop is empty. These are the sizes where the parents start to slow up on them because they really can't feed them properly. I'm talking about even the foster parents. The Budapest themselves can't feed their babies at all. So then every once in a while, mix the gruel up to keep the consistency good. Always make sure you check it with your hand when you first start that it's not too hot, because of course you would scald them if it's too hot. So I run it from the tap pretty hot. I let the grains swell up. That's why I pre-drill the end of the syringe, so that the syringe will not get clogged, and then you can make a nice smooth delivery. The all plastic syringes or Nalgene or whatever they're made out of are much better to use, because you can use them over and over again. There's a couple of them that have gaskets that are good, but I still like the all plastic ones compared to the ones with the gaskets. I have one left. He's a little larger. He gives me a hard time sometimes, so I want you to see that it isn't all that easy. They give me a hard time also, so they're going to give you a hard time. So I don't know what this guy will do today, but he fights me. And he's cooperating. Probably hungrier than usual, and you can see he's completely filled. You can see how healthy he is. He's been raised completely on this mixture, which is, you know, pigeon pellets with the probiotics, and you can see how nice and healthy and feathered they are. I wouldn't recommend having to do this all the time. This is to save, you know, save a baby here or there, or if you want to, you know, try to increase your yield in a particular color or something that year. But you can see why they have to be hand-fed, because of the short beak that they have. I mean, they are called, you know, Budapest Short Beak, and there's a reason for it. Their beak is 1/3 the size of a normal pigeon, and of course the head has to be very, very square like this one. So the disadvantage is that you have to use foster parents for them, or they could not exist. And once they start to pick up the grain themselves, then you'll be fine. So just keep them healthy, and do this at night, because you're giving the parents a chance during the day to feed them. You're giving them a chance to pick any grains that they can, and you do this for a last resort. I would not do this on every baby, you know, full time. I only do it on the ones that are giving me a hard time. So let me adjust the camera a second. So I hope I helped you with this video more than the grain feeding video. The grain feeding video is great for one bird, but when you have a large number of birds, or you have to take them from the egg all the way up to adulthood, it's very, very difficult to do on the grain method, unless you just have one bird and you're feeding it, you know, grain at a time, which can be done. I did that when I was a boy, but now that I have, you know, so many young Budapests to take care of, or I'm trying to enhance, you know, particular color, then I resort to this. And this, I can feed 100 babies in less than an hour and a half. That's if I'm going fast. If I'm going slower and taking my time, I like to look at them, band them, and double check them and things. But something like this gruel is really very, very easy. I'm sure that everybody has chicken pellets available to them if they don't have pigeon pellets available to them. If you don't have the probiotics in the pellet to begin with, you can dump them in. If you have to, you can dump in an antibiotic. It's a good idea to sterilize these syringes, and sometimes it's a good idea to wash the syringe between your babies, because if one baby has something, you can pass it on to another baby. But it's not usual when they're very small like this and you've been very, very hygienic with them. You're not going to have too many problems. Just make sure that the crop is empty before you refill it, and let them pick as much as they can, and let the parents feed them as much as they can before you resort to something like this. So I hope I helped to give you another perspective on this. I really have to thank Mike Kopiec again, 50 years ago almost, for showing me the cannulas. And once he showed that to me, being a science person, I was able to get the equipment from nurses and doctors and professors and things, that I could use them. Because all you got to do is take a regular intravenous kit and just cut off the needle, and all you need is the cannula part to attach to the syringe. And then later on you can go to the store and you can pick up fish tank tubing. Your veterinarians can help you with some of these syringes, nurses and doctors. In some places you can buy the syringes because you're not looking for the needles. And because of the large number of parrots that are raised in the United States, they do make a lot of syringes just for the parrot feeding, which is something that actually happened after I did this. Mike Kopiec really was the first one to do this. So I'm going to dedicate this film to my friends Stefan and Valentin from Bulgaria, because I've been talking to them about this for so very long, and everyone who writes me asking me how to do it, I finally decided that I should sit down and make the video. I didn't have any help making the video, so I'm sorry for the breaks, but I'm sure that this helped you. And if you have any questions about any of this, you could always write me. All right, thanks. Again, I'm Mike Seiler from the United States. I raise Budapest. It's a great hobby, and you can use this on any kind of baby pigeon that you're having trouble with. Okay, good luck. Thanks.